In my many years of helping guys quit porn, one of the more important things I've discovered is how to help men handle an attraction to specific porn fetishes. Because for a lot of guys, they might be able to generally stay away from most types of sexual imagery, but then one specific type of porn will hold the power to pull them back in. And it could be a specific kind of sex act, an actress, a certain kind of video, or even an attraction to a particular body part they just can't get out of their head. The types of fetishes that exist today are staggering in scope, ranging from exactly what you would expect to some truly outlandish things. And whatever the fetish might be, it generates a special kind of intense charge that a lot of guys have an extremely difficult time walking away from. Now, not every guy struggling with porn has some kind of fetish that has a strong hold over him, but a good percentage do. So in this video, I'm going to teach you not only how to understand and overcome your fetish, but also clue you into a huge opportunity that exists for you in your masculine development journey. So let's get into it. Okay, so the place where a lot of guys try to start this work and ultimately end up getting stuck is trying to discover the source of their fetish. And in my opinion, there are three main types of fetish origins with possible overlap occurring between them. So the first place that fetishes can come from are just genetics, okay? And this is just what it sounds like. Your specific attraction is biologically coded into your DNA. Things like an attraction to a pretty female face or figure is kind of an example of this, but for some guys it gets, very specific, very specific about a certain body type or racial preference or whatever. The second potential origin is developmental, and in this case, a formative experience created a specific psychological imprint on you that shaped the way your sexual attraction developed. Now, this could be like one intense instance, or it could be more of a conditioned one over time. But an example might be you might hold a particular attraction to women who share traits with your first love. Or maybe in a much sadder turn, sometimes guys who suffered sexual abuse will have their attractions altered in sometimes even extreme ways. Another example would be porn that you discovered during your formative adolescent years could also impact what you're turned on by. And then we have the third type of origin, which would be escalation-induced fetishes. Okay, and in this type, the fetish is formed through a desensitization and escalation of taste due to heavy porn use. Basically, what happens is the guy gets bored of more vanilla stuff, and then because he's using it so much, and then he needs to progressively step into more and more hardcore and extreme things to keep triggering the emotional reaction that makes the whole process exciting, leading to, that stimulated, massive release at the end. And the rough part about escalation-induced fetishes is that this process can happen very randomly and oftentimes at the hands of the suggested videos on porn sites where they slowly drip wilder and wilder things in to keep you clicking. And this can lead you getting into stuff that you would have initially been repulsed by when you were younger and more innocent. And as I said, these sorts of origins can sort of mix, match, and overlap, okay? Something that maybe starts as genetic or developmental, then gets twisted and or amplified through just, repeated exposure to porn and the escalation that results from it. The problem around this whole discussion occurs when guys get obsessed with trying to figure out where their fetish comes from. And while this can be useful to some guys, you should not spend too much time or energy on this because ultimately finding the origin doesn't really matter and can end up being a distraction to actually fixing the issue. Because at the end of the day, regardless of where your fetish comes from, it'll either be completely eradicated or rendered irrelevant through rebooting your brain and developing sexual self-mastery, as we teach here. Which brings me to another critical point, another big issue that gets in the way of guys properly addressing their fetishes. And that is, you got to stop beating yourself up so much. Because for many guys, like in my experience of coaching them, talking about the specifics of their fetish is probably one of their least favorite topics to discuss in details. Guys rarely want to share that kind of stuff because so often there's such a very strong feeling of shame attached to it. In fact, this is the reason why I positioned this topic within the dignity section of this program. I found that without a connection to dignity, most guys have a really hard time taking a productive look at their particular proclivities. So instead of wasting your energy on undignified thoughts of shame, self-judgment, and beating yourself up, remember that a troubling fetish does not define your worth. Okay, you got to decide to love yourself enough to work toward getting clean and fixing the situation so that it no longer holds power over you. And have a little compassion for yourself, because chances are, you didn't know what you were signing up for. You might not even have had any control over how this emerged inside of you, right? So just being mean to yourself or feeling ashamed of it, it's not the right approach. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to embrace it and be like, oh yeah, this is my fetish. I'm all in on this, all right? That's what modern psychology tries to preach, but generally speaking, that just leads to debauchery, hedonism, and addiction, okay? We are saying that we have a certain way we want to live. We have certain morals, certain ways we want to use our sexuality. And you can decide that, hey, this fetish, at least, the pornographic exploration of it, that falls outside of what I want. And guess what? You can take control over that in a healthy way. That is not repression. That is just you deciding how you want to live and what your morals are. So with that said, let's get into the crux of how to actually deal with your fetish. Right? And so the thing you got to understand about overcoming fetishes is that they are giving you access to something that triggers a special response inside of you that other sorts of sexual material does not. And what's unique about fetishes is that beyond just sexual excitement, there is typically some sort of non-sexual emotion at play that ultimately heightens arousal. So for example, okay, like the non-sexual emotions, they could be things like feeling powerful or feeling taken care of or feeling special. It could be, the excitement of a sense of rebellion. It could be about breaking boundaries and liberation. Maybe it's tied to intimacy, or maybe it's connected to surrender, all right? It could be anything that your emotional mind finds compelling. If I wanted to give you some common generalized examples and, with a bit more specifics, it could be stuff like the guy who's into being submissive usually gets a feeling of being taken care of, or the ability to let go and stop having to be in charge. The guy who's into being dominant might be getting a feeling of power, control, or purpose from being surrendered to, okay? If a guy's hooked on a specific body part, typically he's seeing that as a very valuable trophy that would make him feel special or complete if he could unite with it in a sexual manner. Guys into taboo stuff feel like they're breaking free from constricting rules or being invited into some kind of special secret that generates a sense of intimacy. Guys into voyeurism, they get a feeling of inclusion or access. Some guys are into stuff that makes them feel disgust or shame or humiliation, and they're kind of confused by it. Well, in these instances, they might be essentially taking the shame or frustration that they're feeling in their regular life but's repressed, and then they're taking it out and they're turning it toward pleasure. They're eroticizing something that is typically unpleasant, and it gives them a feeling of control over those negative emotions. But regardless of what the specific thing is, you want to find that non-sexual emotion that the fetish triggers in you, right? And if you can find that thing, then that's going to give you a lot of leverage. But before I say what we do with that, just a quick aside here. If you upon examining your fetish, you do not find some additional core emotion, you just find general sexual attraction, then just treat it like a normal porn craving and follow the methods we've already discussed. There's no need for any sort of special considerations. But if you do have an additional emotion there, then here's what you got to do from the fetish. You must simply find a healthier way to honor the desire present in that emotion. And you do that by running the 3 questions, just like we do with any craving. So let's say your fetish gives you a feeling of power. Well, what you want is a feeling of that control, that power, that influence, that security, okay? And so that's what you want. How can you win? Well, it's probably through taking charge of some area of your life that you've been neglecting, some place where you're showing up weak, where you want to be powerful, right? You got to find that spot and start moving toward that. Who will you be? The guy who rejects apathy in that area and embraces responsibility, or something like that, whatever is contextually accurate for you. So another example, let's say your desire, if you key into it, it's desire is like, what do I want? I want to feel deeply special. I want to feel important. Okay, all right, that's what you want. How can you win? What would make you feel special? Well, to other people, who makes you feel special? Maybe you can be around those people. Maybe you need to feel special to you. Maybe you need to focus on acknowledging why you think you're special. Like, what do you like about you? What is interesting about you? What is good about you? Do you celebrate those things? Do you explore those things, right? And then who will I be? Well, I'm going to be the guy who rejects virtual affirmation and embraces actions that unlock a feeling of security and authenticity and specialness in an aligned way. Now, there are countless ways that this fetish pattern can show up and be solved in your life, way more than I could hope to outline here. So if you're stuck on this sort of thing, then consider reaching out and having a one-on-one session with me. I can help you break down your unique situation because everybody's stuff looks a little bit different here. But the core process really is the same for everyone. Fetishes are ways in which we trap our authentic desires in sexual holding cells. And we need to break those emotions free, understand what they want, and then figure out a way to honor them properly. Right? It's not just about white knuckling through the desire for the fetish. It's about taking and reclaiming responsibility for all the authentic core emotional desire that the fetish has kind of wrapped itself around. Right? It's like, that's what you're doing. You're taking responsibility. The fetish is like, oh, I'll take care of this little part of you. And you got to say, no, reach in there, pull it out, be like, I'm going to take care of this part. I'm going to take care of this desire. I'm going to do it in the right way. And to be clear, all right, you don't even need to get that emotion perfectly. Don't get caught up in perfectly fulfilling every emotional preference to the level that the fetish material does, all right? That is not necessary. In some cases, it's not possible, all right? That's just addict drug brain thinking. Okay? All you need to do is for that aching part of you to feel understood and for it to know that you're taking it seriously enough to do what you can to move toward an authentic resolution. So that's it on this topic for now. For some of you guys, this is not even relevant, but for some of you, it's going to be a big deal, and it might be a really challenging one. Like I said, in that case, you might want additional support, via one-on-one with me or working with some other professional. Regardless, I hope you found this useful, and I will see you in the next lesson. Yeah.